republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Sam, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Here.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Here.
Mr. France?
Here.
Mr. Marshall?
Here.
Mrs. McGrattan? Here. Mr. Soms?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Here.
9 here, 0 absent.
We are all here. That's obviously a quorum. Are there residents or property owners wishing to address the council? Okay, none. Next up, we have committee, commissions, and board reports. And tonight, I'm happy to have Mr. Jeff Beecham here, who chairs the Ledyard Town Center Committee, and he's going to give us an update on their nearly completed project.
Thank you very much, Sean. I'm Jeff Beecham for Greystone Court, current chairman of the Ledyard Town Center Committee. 2 other past chairs are on the council right now, so we have a lot of representation here. I apologize that this isn't real polished. I was in California. I think I had a cocktail in my hand when I got the email from Roxanne. So I just put together
That's the reason I had her ask you. I had a feeling you were having too much fun.
I have to give full credit to these photographs. Our mayor took an IT class, I think, that he emailed these to me from his phone. Because I wasn't around to see this, and I just got in early this morning. The walk between the stairs and the corner here, that's an adder. We somehow missed that when we wrote the original contract. And so it was just stone dust, and we decided we needed to do that, so we went back and added that into the contract. Topsoil's been put in. There's seeding yet to come. Still a little work up on the top side, but it's very close to complete. And that's a little closer of some of the stone dust. The walking track on the top, the mayor noted that he didn't even realize there had been a track there. There's always been a stone dust track, but not in the greatest shape. And we're trying to establish a little better base track up there. Next. So the real meat of this thing, it's going to be a little hard to see on this, I apologize, is the finances of where we stand. We had a steep grant for $150,000. To date, we have contracted out $146,000 of that $150,000. We have actually paid $132,000, and we've contracted another $14,300. That's yet to be paid out. Part of that was we were withholding about $13,000 from the contractor just to get this hit list, make sure all the little things we have left to be done, get those all cleaned up. And we owe a small payment left to the landscape architect. He's been our project manager throughout this, and so we have one left, $1,500 payment left to him. But that leaves us with a grand total of $3,690 left. And the committee has hoped to proportion that in conjunction with the Fair Committee to remove and replace 3 kind of ugly light poles up there. I say we're going to replace them. We're really going to relocate them. I'm not sure what's going to go in. It's going to be a lot prettier, but they're going to be positioned better. One is currently, if you walk the property, we have an arched entryway adjacent to the school, and there's one smack dab in the middle of that, and there's a couple that are real close to the fence. We're going to try to pull them out, put them in a little more appropriate position. We've worked long and hard with the Fair Committee, and it's been quite a seesaw battle with them. Or not battle, but sometimes, I guess.
Discussion. Lively discussion.
And so they've, there were places where we compromised and places where they compromised, so we felt we wanted to do this to stay on good terms with everybody. And so that's what our plan is to do with that final money, and it'll leave us, I think they've estimated $3,000 for that, so we end up about $600 in the black. So then the punch list was put together. The landscape architects over there quite often, and members of the committee walk it all the time. So we put together this list. And as I said, I wasn't here this last week, so a lot of this has been knocked off, and we're being told within the week this should be complete. And once the grass comes in, we should have quite a nice green there. So our plan is, and at your pleasure, we would like to keep going. Again, looking for some more grant money. We know there's not a whole lot left in the budget for us. But if we can get some grant money, we'd like to go on with the second phase of our project, which is an amphitheater where the current stage is, which is kind of not a great stage, I'd say play. So we'd like to put a bigger amphitheater in, and that would face the school property. So it would make that whole green area become a little more utilitarian. You could have bluegrass bands, the high school bands could play, and those types of things. Along those lines with the high school, we're hoping to on, I think it's June 2nd, correct me if I'm off on that one.
We may have another date,
Oh, okay.
but close to June 2nd.
Yeah.
Early June.
We want to have a little ribbon cutting and kind of welcome the town to the green. And we're hoping to have some of the choral groups from the high school come and do a little teaser for a show. We had thought for the night of the show, but I missed my meeting on Monday, so I'm not sure if we've revised much of that. But it was going to be, the idea was to have sort of a whole town picnic. And that was the...
And that is still the plan.
Okay.
It's just a different night with maybe a little more activity.
Oh, okay.
So, but we haven't
Sounds
got a
wonderful.
commitment from the other group that we wanted to do that with, so that's why we haven't come up with it.
Okay.
Okay, well, first, thank you very much for all the work. It really looks nice, and I think you guys have done a great job. As a small point, I know that Memorial Day Parade, we normally gather a lot of people out there. Hopefully there won't be a trampling of anything that you want to show off shortly thereafter.
We understand. I mean, we know that it's going to get trampled once a year on that first weekend in September every year. And so we're hoping that what's done is rugged enough to do that, and possibly it becomes enough of an attraction that we start moving some of the rides out of that area and do other things. That's our hope.
Yeah, it's just the timing of
early
June. We'll cut a ribbon, but right before that, we're gonna have a crowd show up for where the Memorial Day Parade normally launches. Okay, and now, so you mentioned staying on, trying to get more money. Is there a pending grant application?
There are grants out there. Now, we're going to have to work with the mayor and the EDC and where that money goes. There is desire to use some of that money on the other side of town, so we'll have to see what is available. We have heard from Tom Reynolds that there is a new streetscape grant coming through, but we have not seen that yet. And, the planner is keeping his eye on that, and as soon as it comes in, we'll take our second phase and just submit that and get into the pool as quickly as we can. Money's tight everywhere, so we'll see.
Okay, do we need to revise your charter?
Probably.
We refer that to admin?
Yeah, I
Or
think
should
so.
we leave
Since they only had a one-year charter and we're now like 5 years out.
We were extended once, I think.
We
but,
did.
Yeah, I
We
don't
did,
think
yeah.
quite the...
Well, my only concern would be that
This way you can't fire us because we don't work for you.
my only concern would be that basically you run the risk of becoming one of these committees that sort of lingers on.
Yep.
Nothing happens, and eventually you lose steam, and then we just sort of lose any record of tying up all loose ends.
Right, understood. And
having
we,
finality.
we've discussed this amongst all the members, and everybody, we don't seem to have worn anybody out too badly yet, and so we would like to keep going. So.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions or
Yeah,
comments?
the thinking is that if you go back to the original town center plan, the reason behind this project is, well, number one, we've got a grant, this is what we can afford to do. But the original plan says you want to have a village center concept. The more activity, the more going on in the center of your village, the more attractive that is to retail and economic growth. So the second phase of the plan, which we couldn't afford with the first grant, was to do the stage, the new stage, as Jeff mentioned. And behind that is the opportunity to have regular community events in the town center, which meets that it helps support traffic, activity, events, things going on in the center of the village, attracts more development. And we think that's more valuable than just the first phase, which looks nice, but doesn't necessarily attract economic development. That's why we want to stay on.
Councilor Wadecki.
First, I want to say it looks wonderful. I just love to
We're all
drive by
very
there. Is the farmer's market going to be there this?
Yep, that's the
They're
plan.
gonna be there on-
Yep.
Because I didn't know how they would fit in there now with everything.
We had actually hoped to have more trees for them to set up under, but the plan has always been to, that's really the kind of thing we'd like to encourage more than the one weekend a year, get something there as often as we can, and that just brings people out.
The other thing I would like to point out is that the Town Center Committee, although as of late we've been focusing on the town green, the fairground project, but our original charter mandated us to look at all of Ledyard Center.
Yeah.
So some of the other things the committee is also considering is not just phase 2 of what we can do in the green area, but also between, the light at the library to the light at the library. So, at the post office. So, there are other things that we've gotten plans that we've thought about as well. So, in other grants that we may be looking at in the future to develop that whole strip, or I shouldn't say directly develop is the wrong term. Improve that whole strip.
Yes, Councilor Wright.
Is the Town Center Committee going to take the action to try and book some of those activities? Or
Currently, no. We didn't want to get into that sort of thing. The idea would be that we would work with the Fair Committee, and they have talked about having things like that, and they just haven't had the venue for it. Some of the members have wanted a community center that would have a stage and stuff, but that would be, we would do this whole thing in conjunction with them. So we understood how it impacted everything we're doing with the fair, but it also would open up other additional weekends for them to have bluegrass festivals or the maple syrup festival, and Bill could bring very small festival, but those are the kind of things. And there's also the Fair Committee's always talked about that there's an antique car association, and I imagine that's through some Lewis connections, but they wanted to go there, but because it's basically been a dirt field, nobody wants to park their nicely polished car on a dirt field. So we would have to get to the point where we've evolved far enough that the rides moved somewhere else on the property, and you could use that as your concert venue and your other things up in that area. But there's a lot of logistics issues to getting there.
Other questions or comments? Okay, thank you again very much for that report and for all that your committee has done for the town. Okay, next on the agenda is comments of town councilors. Yes, Councilor Marshall.
Last week I attended the Bluff Point to Preston Trail Spring Kickoff meeting. B and Paul Reynolds opened up their house to the committee, and there were about 30 people that went there. In fact, it was 30 of the nicest people in one room I've met in a long time, aside from in here.
We were ready to jump on that one, John.
No, trust me, they're nicer than any of the people.
Chad Frost from Ken Frost was there. He gave us a nice PowerPoint presentation, one we've all seen before. Pretty much was all supporters of the trail, so it wasn't much point in showing us that. It was nice to see it again anyway. But the main focus of the night was raising money. Groton and Ledyard have both applied for grants, and we still haven't heard anything back from them yet. But we have to match 20% of that grant, which is like $80,000. So on October 2nd, our first fundraiser is going to be at the Paddock on Rose Hill Road. It's going to be a silent auction. We need volunteers to help organize and run and sell food and things like that. So you get a hold of me on my town email for more information on that. That's about it.
Okay, thank you. Councilor McGrath.
Yes. Tomorrow night, Teresa Fields, who's the nurse at Ledyard Center School, is going to be honored with the Nightingale Award for Excellence in Nursing. I'm going to attend the Freedom of Information training next week in Groton. There's a 3-hour course at the municipal building. And also the nursing department had in this fiscal year's budget that they would turn back, or their income would be $420,000. They have exceeded that by $139,000. Yeah. Yeah. So of course there's a larger number in next year's budget for them to bring in, but they've done very well, and a lot of it is hard work and marketing. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Soms, was that your hand going up?
I was gonna, but Linda had hers up first.
Oh, okay.
Pointing to her.
Put a gentleman.
I was not able to attend the last meeting where the council voted to approve the money for the architect of requested by the Board of Ed. And while I would have gone along and approved that, I still have a problem with the process. I still have a problem. I don't think anybody understands the ordinance, the Permanent Municipal Building Committee. And based on the minutes that I read, I thought that there was some issues that aren't clear about the ordinance, and that perhaps it wouldn't be a bad idea if we all read it again.
Okay.
Okay? That's my comment. For instance, would you like a for instance?
We were waiting for that.
Well, I didn't want to, it just, there was a...
So much for all those nice people in the room.
For instance, there was a comment made that, well, it doesn't have to go through the building committee because the cost of the architect does not exceed $25,000. Well, that has nothing to do with anything. The municipal building committee ordinance talks about $25,000 in terms of the capital project number. An architect is not a capital project. And certainly the project is going to cost more than $25,000. So I still think it should have gone through the building committee. It talks specifically about interviewing architects, reviewing plans, and that type of thing. Again, I have no issue with the project. I would have voted exactly the way you had. I would have given this speech, so at least I have the opportunity to give it now. And
Okay.
would suggest that everybody take a look at it again.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Now, Councilor Soms.
Last town council meeting, I put in a plug for the high school play that was now this past Saturday. My wife and my daughter and I went, and I have to say, I wouldn't bring it up again, but it was such a fantastic production. Some of the actors we have in Ledyard High School, adult and student, are just stunning. They're just amazing performance. It was funny, it was enjoyable, and what really struck me about the whole event was that I must have run into 5 different families that I knew that had no kids in the school. They were just there, and I asked them why they were there. I said, who do you know who's in the show? And they said, we're here because this is a good night out. And it really was.
It was very well
enjoyable.
attended.
Yeah. Great night.
Any others? Okay, I'd like to take the opportunity to point out that, first of all, before we meet again, we have a town meeting and referendum on our budget. Our budget has generated almost no controversy, which is a good thing, in my view, from the standpoint of, I think it reflects well on your elected officials that both Board of Education and the town government are working together very well. The downside of no controversy is it doesn't generate much news, so it doesn't get very well publicized, and I sometimes fear that our budget could get defeated just based on apathy alone, maybe a vote of 10-9 in the
It'll be
referendum.
more than that because there's 9 of us and our spouses.
Okay, so please
And the mayor.
put it on your calendar. Don't forget and come out and vote for the budget. Please come out and give us comments at the town meeting, but there will be a budget referendum on Tuesday, the 22nd, correct? All right, thank you. One other announcement I have, this is a personal one, but I have been nominated to a position out of Washington, D.C. The position requires confirmation by the Senate, which I am waiting for. The position's on the Defense Nuclear Facility Safety Board. I can't say for certain that I will be confirmed, and I certainly don't know what the timing is because the United States Senate does things whenever they darn well please, and not to any other schedule. So when and if confirmed, I will be taking that job, and it would require that I have to leave the council. But until then, I am giving Ledyard all the effort that the town deserves based on the fact that you elected me to this position. All right, so with that, we're going to move on. We have a communications list. Any additions, comments, questions? Next item is the minutes for approval. We have the minutes of the public hearing. We have the minutes of a public hearing for the ordinance. So the first was the budget public hearing. Second was for the ordinance modification for 125, which was the pension board. And we have the regular meeting minutes of April 25th. Do I have a motion to approve those?
I'll move along.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Abstain.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Abstain.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
7 in favor, 2 abstention.
Okay, the minutes, the motion's passed, minutes are approved. Okay, I'm sorry, next we have communications on the agenda, and the communications list, which I already mentioned once, but I'll mention it again. No comments or questions. All right, council subcommittee and liaison reports, administration. Councilor Eichelberg.
The administration committee met earlier tonight. We made a motion to adopt the town council policy guidelines for remote meeting participation, which will come up later in our meeting. We also talked about the resolution regarding collection of fee for motor vehicles. We talked about a motion on tax abatement for a proposal between the town of Ledyard and the Congregational Ecclesiastical Society for that elderly housing. We did spend some time considering combining the Planning Commission and Zoning Commission, and we moved that forward with a recommendation for a public hearing. We also talked about the stormwater ordinance, citation ordinance, and that was pretty much our meeting.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions for administration? All right, next on the list is community services. Council Marshall.
We haven't met since our last meeting. We'll meet tomorrow.
Okay.
And we'll be discussing the gun range, proposed gun range. So that if anyone wants to attend and be heard, please show up at 5 o'clock.
All right, finance. Council France.
In addition to the motions that we brought forward later meeting, or last week, we discussed a plan that the mayor had brought forward for distribution of funds from the sale of the part of the property owned by the school. And we also had some small discussion on the tax payment plan for the Ecclesiastical Society as well.
Okay, are there questions for finance? All right, information technology. Councilor Davis.
Short report, basically, we finished up the remote meeting participation policy that will be voted on this evening. The next policy we're working on is a email communications policy that would affect the council and the volunteer commissions.
All right, are there questions for IT? All right, land use planning, public works. Councilor Dombrowski.
Land use is met. Many of the same items that admin had discussed, we had also discussed as far as the stormwater ordinance, combining the planning and zoning commission, the tax abatement for the Ecclesiastical Society, and also our next action item that we're looking at doing is drafting an ordinance for combining the plan of the wetlands and conservation commissions.
Okay. Thank you. Board of Education liaison. Councilor Davis.
Nothing other than what's been in the newspapers, but we do obviously have a new high school principal, Amanda Fagan, who's been with the system for a number of years. The board did hire the architect in terms of the project for the middle school, and I think that's pretty much what's been happening.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Board of Education? WPCA liaison?
WPCA has not met since the last town council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Any other liaison reports? All right, moving right along. Next item on the agenda is the mayor.
Okay, thank you. The state has approved the grant, or the bonding commission passed the funds that would be required to purchase the Volpe property north of the subbase. So we have begun, even though we have not obtained any of those funds, there are a number of hurdles we have to go through. One is a resolution that I've set. It's a standard resolution from the state making sure we have approval from the council, so you'll be seeing that soon. We have contracted with an appraiser to get an appraisal, which of course is required. We have also spoken and gotten a commitment for a survey, and then also an environmental survey. So we're moving through all of the hurdles that we do need to put we have a tentative agreement with the landowner, so we will need to put a $1,000 deposit, so we're looking, for places we can find that. All of those expenses will be reimbursed, but right now at this time in our budget, we're scratching for some of those funds, but maybe we can ask the nurses if we can borrow some of their money. So that's moving ahead very well. Speaking of the building committee, I have prepared an RFP for a police facility architectural, can't use the word study, it's not going to be a study, but to hire an architect to give us some basic information that we would need. It was patterned on the Board of Education RFP also. I used the same document, just changed some of the words, some of the requirements. That is ready to go. I've received all of the input from the police, building committee. I sent it to the council. I don't know if I got any comments from you on that. And, I plan to work with the building committee on that project and get their input. And I plan to have them down select the architect and then work with the architect to come up with the design cost of the building and depending on where the building ends up. So that one's moving ahead. So if you have any comments on that process, please let me know, but I've heard nothing so far. Along the same lines, speaking of the police, Councilor Marshall brought up about the firing range. Just to bring you up to speed on that, what I have done is we had a meeting with our insurance company organization, Kerma. They gave us some input. I got a call, interestingly, from the vice president at Colt Industries, who had some very interesting information, sent me some presentations that have some interesting information on. So I sent a list of questions to the police to ask them to answer those questions before I make my decision. It's not too late if the council has any concerns. I have not heard anything, so I'm proceeding on that. I do have a request from really the tax collector through my office, and that is the referendum is on May 22nd. The council meets on May 23rd. If it was at all possible for the council to set the mill rate on May 23rd, that would be much appreciated. There were years when we literally set the mill rate at the second meeting in June, back in the days when budgets used to be defeated and reworked. And so if you could do that, the reason being we are seriously contemplating using an outside vendor to print and mail our tax forms. We're in the process of determining who will provide the services for the lockbox, and we plan to really emphasize as much as possible through publicity getting people to use the lockbox. There's also a feature that they're looking at for online payments, which would only cost 50 cents. So we're going to make every effort to get as many people as possible to use the lockbox, online bill pay, and of course the dime savings bank. So between those three, nothing against the tax collector, but ideally no one would ever show up at the town hall to pay their taxes.
Careful how you say that.
Except for Councilor Ledyard. Yes.
I normally don't like to interrupt you, Mr. Mayor, but you asked if this was possible, so I'm going to turn to finance, and I've got two of the three of you sitting to my right. So is this, let's make the rash assumption that at least 11 people show up to approve the budget and it passes. Is it possible then that the next night we could set the mill rate?
Depends if we have all the revenue numbers from the state.
Okay.
That's the biggest factor.
And since the state session ends tonight, it ends tonight. And yeah, I know, I've seen numbers. Representative Reynolds has sent us numbers, but the session ends tonight, and unlike years past, I've heard no talk of having emergency sessions, follow-on sessions. So I think the state will be done tonight.
If they are done tonight, then we can do that.
Okay. Well, you need a special meeting first on Wednesday, the
23rd?
23rd.
We can probably discuss it at finance the week before. Oh, okay, I guess we might.
Okay.
Yes, we'll only
All right, so we'll put that on track.
Okay, that would be very helpful.
We will make that the tentative plan.
You may not have all seen it, but, I did get numbers from CCM that look like they're fine. They're all plus or minus. There were some pluses that we got in some of the new legislation, so, I'll be at finance next week and be happy to work with you.
You missed that.
What's
There's
that?
no finance meeting next week.
Oh, there's not?
Oh, there's not? Oh, okay.
That's what he just told me.
Oh.
No finance meeting next week. The regular meeting has been canceled. They're going to have a special meeting
On the 23rd.
on the 23rd prior to the council meeting.
So the mayor will be at that one.
That's why I didn't have it in the schedule. I thought I made a mistake, so I
Oh,
went back and
you
put it
did
in.
not make a mistake. Perfect as usual.
Speaking of the Memorial Day Parade, I've had some discussions with the Lions about that, and I'm going to make an effort, to be in the parade. I've, been there occasionally, and I would invite the council. They said if you folks would like to do something, they even offered us a float, but I thought that was going to be a bit much. And so anyway, if you'd like to do that, we could all get together and march down the street, and so people can say, who are those people?
Those stones.
We continue to receive Irene FEMA reimbursements. We already received, I think, about $74,000 for Public Works. There's a few of the others for ambulance and police and fire companies that that are starting to come through. I think we have one more left. Altogether, it's about $90-something thousand. So that's nice. That will help us to reimburse some of the line items we have. I've been watching the budget along with my staff. I haven't put a freeze on yet. I've put a soft freeze, telling people basically do not spend any money unless it's absolutely necessary, because the budget is going to be close this year. Of course, we do have the added income as some additional income that's come in, as Councilman McGrath mentioned. As part of the Clean Water Week, Groton Utilities is conducting a hike through the Ledyard Reservoir at 10 a.m. this Saturday. This is not something that happens often. The interesting thing is this is the second time in a year that they're having one of those walks. If you've never been on a walk, and this isn't just along the reservoir, this is into the reservoir. If you've never done that, the thought you have when you're in there is you're someplace else other than Ledyard. It is just a whole different world in there. So if you've never done that, meet at the Overlook parking on Sandy Hollow Road at 10 o'clock this coming Saturday. And they say it's a 3 to 5 mile hike. I don't remember it being that long, but wear comfortable shoes. But it will be worth your while to do that. And finally, you spoke about the town meeting and the budget referendum. I think we should make a real effort with media to get the public out. We do have the signs. We're going to be hanging them on the fences on both sides of town. We have the town website, Facebook, patch, bulletin the day. I'd like to see us get a good turnout for this, and I think with our media, we should be able to make the public aware. And that is my report.
Are there questions for the mayor?
One question.
Yes.
On the referendum, absentee ballots, are they available yet?
They are available and being used.
Okay.
I actually witnessed one happening.
Me.
Just wanted to get it out there that they were there. And that people
Absentee ballots are available. Absentee ballots are available in the clerk's office right now, so you can come in and get that and vote whenever is convenient.
Okay, just a quick question. Our new highway superintendent is on the job? Is that
I'm
correct?
sorry, I apologize. Our highway superintendent, Dean Hunniford, started at 7 a.m. I was there introducing him along with our Public Works Director, and he is busily on the road with his people. So, yes.
Great. Okay, thank you. All right, if there are no other questions for the mayor, we will move, there are no items of old business. Before I get to new business, is there anybody who wishes to amend the agenda? All right, seeing none, first two items on the new business agenda is the consent calendar, two routine finance motions, and it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roxanne, please call the roll.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, motion passes. Next item on the agenda, finance.
I'd like to make a motion to grant a bid waiver for the purchase and implementation of People GIS software for a land use tracking document management solution for the town of Ledyard.
Second.
The MLS department looked at 5 different options for this, and they produced a ranking system of objective measures. The outcome of that ranking was a vote in favor of the People GIS software, both on cost as well as the utility perspective of the software.
Okay, and the cost is approximately?
8750, 7500 a year.
First year, about $16,000, $7,500 a year following each year.
Okay, and as I recall from the various options they considered, that compared very favorably.
Yes.
So, for-
And that was also the one that IT.
IT recommended it. It does a lot more than just land use, and that was why we favored it.
Okay.
Who else will be able to take advantage of it?
Town clerk's office.
Senior citizens.
The whole town government.
You name it, it does it.
Extremely flexible. I went to one of the presentations, very compelling. They used the town of Weston, Mass., which is a heavy user of the program, if you will, and they showed all the things they've done with it. You can track where people live who need assistance. You can track people who have dog licenses. So basically, you set up forms and you store all this information, and it allows you, so in an emergency, if you need to know where all the people who need assistance are, like in Hurricane Irene, we could have reached out to them because you'd have all this on.
That's a good idea then for
Very
dispatch for, people that need help because of a medical emergency or a fire,
So it's more than land use, it's way more than we started out with, trying to tie the land use departments together. Norwich uses it, I checked with them, they seem happy with it, so.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, Roxanne, please call the roll.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
All right, motion passes. Item 4 on the agenda, finance.
Make a motion to appropriate up to $20,000 from the sale of a portion of the former Gales Ferry School property to account 6-10-11-99 police building to allow the municipal building committee to support the design and site selection of an alternate police facility.
Second.
All right, so this is for the mayor's specific request.
That's correct.
Right, and what, if anything, are we going to tell the building committee as guidance for, are we just giving them $20,000? Or we just have the mayor tell them what to do?
I have an RFP which describes what we're asking for from the architect. When that comes in, when those bid packages come in, given to the building committee, it does give you the option of calling in 3 or 4 of the top contenders and interviewing them and speaking with them, but I will do everything through the building committee.
Okay, so the guidance to the building committee is to try to use the RFP
Yes.
as their guidance to get the maximum return for this $20,000.
Okay.
All right, I understand that. Is there any other discussion, comments, questions? Yes.
Just 2 comments. I wanted to put in a plug for the Town Center Committee, if I could. On location, Town Center Committee has long recommended that the former firehouse right here in the center of town is a good candidate for another use of the town building. It's ideal for police. One of the comments or suggestions we got when we presented to the land use committees was that we use that site, tear down the building that's there, use the site with a parking garage downstairs where we currently have a parking lot, which gives you a much larger footprint for a building, large enough for a police station. That would at least support the interests of the Town Center Committee in creating more of a village center with activities right in town. I know it's not the only site, so just wanted to put that out.
It is town-owned?
It is town-owned.
Let me just tell you, you're preaching to the choir, although I'm trying not to influence the process. There are some who would, when I mentioned that site several years ago, we were told it was hands-off because that was part of the bigger Ledyard Center plan. Well, I think that plan is kind of moved aside, but I have it open. I was specifically vague on what the site is, and I spoke to the building committee and said, and I spoke to the police also. What are the sites that we should be looking at? So if there are other sites, please bring them forward.
Okay, we'll put that forward.
No, but I guess it just does bring up sort of the larger point. We're gonna ask the building committee to go off and look at this. But the question is related to questions that have been studied by other committees, including the Planning Commission and the Town Center Committee. So perhaps we ought to find a way to formalize some guidance to the building committee that we'd like them to consult with some of these other committees. At least, just have them come in and give their 2 cents prior to having the building committee come forward with any final plan for what they recommend be done.
There is a lot of cross-pollination. I mean, let's face it, people on planning sit on EDC and all the other, and Town Center Committee. Jeff is also chairman of EDC. I'm just being very careful to not say that's where it should be. It may turn out to be obvious or intuitive. It may not be to some folks. So, there are other possibilities for that property that are being explored. But I hear you. And again, if the council or as individuals, you have an opinion on this, please make it known so it doesn't look like this is coming from an individual or a committee.
Yes, Councilor Marshall.
I've been in conversations with people before, and we've talked about the old firehouse site, but then we thought maybe better served as a retail site rather than another municipal building in the center of town, and save that for retail. One of the spots we discussed, I think it was last week at Finance, was the old town garage down on 214, which no one's going to put houses there because of the history of the land, but it's the perfect spot for a commercial building built on a slab. We don't need to have issues with soil contamination or that. I think it's pretty clean down there, isn't it?
It depends on
You got a clean bill of health a few years ago.
Yeah, but then they tightened the rules up, and now you don't want to ask if it's clean.
We got a letter a couple of years ago about that too.
Yes, we did. Wasn't it a nice one?
Well, although the firehouse is a great spot, it might be better served as a big picture as a retail location rather than another municipal
It's
building.
kind of small for a retail.
Small for PD. Plus, there's a right-of-way on either side that we don't own either.
Okay, well, I'm going to do this. I mean, we have the question, and we're going to bring that question to a vote in a second, but I'm also going to ask the Land Use Committee to take on, in accordance with the Building Committee's charter, which thankfully Councilor Davis told me to read, so I'm already getting ahead on my homework here. And I'll give you all a head start. One of the paragraphs says, from time to time, the committee may be asked to undertake certain studies or projects by the council, and so that's what we're doing here. So we ought to actually give them something that says, here's what we're asking you to study, and we'll put a little meat on the bones in terms of, please talk to this committee, that committee, whatever. But rather than simply handing them $20,000 and having them figure out what the actual question is that they're supposed to answer, we should probably tell them. So I'm going to ask Land Use to bring something back to the full council a month from now that can follow on. I mean, they won't have done anything by then other than advertise perhaps for an architect. All right. Any other comments or questions on the actual motion before us? If not, Roxanne, please call the roll.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, the motion passes. Item 5 of the agenda, information technology.
I move to adopt the town council policy guidelines for remote meeting participation as contained in the draft dated April 3rd, 2012.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Would
Just
you
the
want to
highlights.
briefly tell us the highlights?
The highlights are simply that there are 5 points. Well, first being that we want to be sure that if you are calling in from a remote, not remote area, but calling in remotely, that you're not calling in from a remote area, that we can't hear you. So we don't want any "can you hear me nows." I think that's basically, we want to make sure that the device you're using has a good strength. The circumstances are not supposed to be reasons of convenience, really should be for illness, emergencies, or travel. A quorum, people that are remote participants are not counted towards the quorum. Otherwise, we could have a meeting with nobody here, which would be kind of interesting. But so the remote people don't count as a quorum. Executive sessions, you can participate in executive session. And then finally, the chairman, if he is a remote participant, the chairman pro tem will preside over the meeting. I think it's a good policy. Seems to cover everything.
Okay, are there questions or comments?
This complies with all FOI rules, correct?
Yes.
I have 2 questions, really just for clarification, but although it says town council and it says meetings, this applies equally to all committee meetings of the council as well as a full council meeting? It doesn't specify in the
We didn't
policy.
actually consider,
I raised that question.
You did.
At the admin meeting, and also at the IT meeting, is the way it was presented, that is the town council policy, so it only applies to the town council.
It is titled Town Council Policy.
Right, but we have committees are committees of the council. They're little sub-animals of the council. Are they not?
Council people better.
Well, it's not clear. Okay, so it's not clear. Because I actually read it and came to the opposite conclusion just by reading it. It said, oh, this must be intended to apply to committees of the council as well as a full council meeting. But
We did not consider committees. That was not our intent. But I'm not certain that they couldn't be included.
I wouldn't object to that, but that was not what we never actually considered that.
okay, well, we could then, perhaps with a friendly amendment, just put in here full meetings of the council to clarify, and then if you want to consider the question, I mean, we don't need to decide at a moment's notice. We haven't had a policy up till now, so if you want to come back later and revise it so that it's clear, if there's a feeling that it should apply to committee meetings. But I think it should just be clear on its face as to which it's intended. So if the intention was to make this only for full meetings of the council, regular special meetings of the full council, and we just ought to modify the language tonight so that it's clear that that's what we're approving.
No, I think we leave it alone and let it apply to committee meetings as well.
Okay.
You don't have to, if it's a town council policy, it would apply to all town council meetings.
It speaks a member of the town council to be physically present at a scheduled meeting. So I interpreted that as if you're a member of the town council and you're going to a meeting,
That's a town council
that's
meeting.
a town council meeting. It's a committee meeting, it's a meeting of the town
Yeah.
council.
I would think,
I have no problem interpreting it that it covers all meetings, but in that there's confusion, we should probably clarify that.
so you just do it to member of the town council at a scheduled meeting of
whole?
Or
Or
sub,
say, or the
or
subcommittee.
subcommittee.
Or just add subcommittee.
Yep.
But if you have subcommittees, that's 3 people. If 2 are gone, that means
No.
one,
Yeah,
there's no
then-
quorum.
then you-
Quorum.
There's no quorum.
But,
It'd be only for the one that was missing.
well, the question I have, I leave there, is that not all committees and boards that we have are appointed by the town council, there are committees and boards that are appointed by the mayor. So, in one.
No, we're talking about just
Yeah, we're only
council.
talking
The town
Okay.
council committee.
And town council subcommittees.
Subcommittees.
That's
Okay.
it, that's all we're talking about.
I would think that, excuse me, got a frog in my throat somewhere, but I would think that under the policy that we set in place, you know, the suggested use for this kind of remote participation, that the remote participation in committees would be very minimal. I don't see that happening very often. So I wouldn't have a problem with accepting this for committees as well.
Okay, so, just so that it will then be clear, unless and until this council or a subsequent one decides to change it, I'm just looking for words that makes it clear. And I guess we need to add, somewhere in that first sentence, some words that make it clear that it's for both regular council, or full council meetings and council committee meetings.
What you can do at the end is add, at scheduled meeting of regular or special town council and its subcommittees.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Friendly amendment.
So, how about the words, to be physically present at a scheduled meeting, or how about at any meeting? Does it, okay, at a scheduled, well, they're all, by definition, they're scheduled, whether they're regular or special. At a scheduled meeting of the full council or any council committee,
Council subcommittee.
subcommittee. Is that, did we get those words? No, you did not.
It's on tape.
Okay. We're changing the first sentence to add at the end of the sentence, where the sentence currently ends with the words "a scheduled meeting." It will now say "a scheduled meeting of the full council or any council subcommittee."
What paragraph you want?
The very,
Very first paragraph, very first
sentence.
line, first sentence.
Oh, that is scheduled. Oh, right, that is the first.
Oh, scheduled meeting, okay, then what?
Of the full
Full
council.
council or any council subcommittee.
Or any.
Council subcommittee.
Okay, and my second point that I wanted to raise was, I don't see it expressly stated in here, but maybe it's implied, but it should be documented in the minutes as to who participated remotely, as opposed to being physically present. In other words, sometime later, when somebody goes back and reads the minutes, it ought to be very clear if somebody was participating remotely that that's what was happening.
The only other question that brings up is, do we want to allow the mayor to report remotely?
But remember, it's not a convenience, Mr. Mayor.
You're not a member of the council.
That's true, it's not.
Well, he's
What if we
not,
make
but
it
I
sick?
mean,
That's true.
you know, he's sometimes not going to make the meetings, and maybe he'd be on travel, and maybe it would be nicer to have him do it remotely than just send a report that we don't get to question him on.
Questions are going to be permitted also?
It's remote, we have to be able to hear you, we have to be able to hear us. Just food for thought.
It is interesting.
I mean, he's the only other person besides us that has it.
Okay, well, while we're chewing on that thought, if we can have a second friendly amendment, under circumstances for remote participation, if we can just add that I think we just add a sentence at the end that says, remote meeting participation shall be documented in the minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine.
Do we wish to address the mayor's participation in any meeting?
I just threw it out there, he's the only other person that normally
I wouldn't necessarily have an issue with that happening.
Okay.
Why does it need to be addressed in the, if he's not here and wants to
The
review
issue
the
really
report?
deals with voting members.
Right.
It really has nothing, we could have remote participation by
From
a
anybody.
resident.
Right.
Yeah,
We allow that, it doesn't have to be done in policy.
I agree
Because
with
they're
that.
not a voting member. The issue is people participating and being able to vote,
Okay.
I think is really the pertinent.
Yeah, the issue would be, we have 6 members here, 7 members here, we have 2 on the phone, we have a vote, the vote comes out 5 to 4. The difference was swung by the people who weren't here, now there's a question without a policy as to whether or not the outcome was a
Right, I
legitimate
guess
outcome.
my point is more to the mayor or anybody else who was participating in the meeting. I think that the issue is, the reason you need a policy is for the voting members of the committee or the council, not for other.
I agree with that, but I think we have to think about who we are going to allow to remotely participate in meetings, in our meetings. Because, are we going to let a citizen remotely participate? I mean, there's a place where we have to draw the line, and we have to make that decision, even if you don't want it in the policy. We do have to make a decision. I mean, would we allow
But
Roxanne
again,
to participate remotely?
If I may, as was said, you would probably have the ability to do that right now with me, because as was said, I'm not making any decisions, I'm not voting. So you could say right now, let's call somebody and put them on the speaker. Nothing would prohibit that. I think so that could happen. I don't think you need to put that.
No, I agree we don't need to put it in there, but I think as a council somewhere, we need to stop and think who we are going to allow to participate remotely. I mean, I don't think you want people calling us up in the middle of meetings and saying, hey, wait a minute,
Well, the other
Yeah.
thing is, but
Yeah.
I don't think you want to hear what he said when Chairman Sullivan says, if we have any citizens' comments, the phone rings.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, you could expand it. I mean, there are probably members of my staff that would be much more valuable in a meeting to be. But again, they'd only be giving information which you have every right to get over the
No,
phone.
I realize that.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Yes, Councilor
Question,
Franks.
the options for participation, is the technology available at present to support video teleconferencing, audio? We don't have a Polycom here, the dial-in is that been addressed?
We do now.
Okay.
You could put somebody.
I brought a Polycom. It's a conference speakerphone that would sit
Okay.
here. It'll have an extension mic down there, another one over here. So it allows everyone to be heard through the microphone to the person on the phone. And because it's a speakerphone, a good quality one, everybody in the room can hear who's on the other end.
I guess are there plans for the video teleconferencing and other capabilities that are there, or is that just an all-encompassing
It's all encompassing.
potential, not planned for the near term?
Now, the key is that, as it says here in the policy, that whatever technology we're using, members of the public have to be able to hear or see. I mean, in theory, it could be chat that's up there on the screen, but it can't be secret. You can't have a council member who is chatting to the other councilors on their computer screens, and the public doesn't hear what the non-present council, or can't see what the non-present council member is saying, because that becomes a secret communication that we're not allowed to do under the open meeting rules. Okay. Councilor Davis.
I will be out of town
Well, I think I see the first
at
instance.
the next town council meeting. So we'll give this a try. And it'll be the simplest version. I'll do it by phone.
As I recall, when we did the research, the FOI rules said, at a minimum, all you need is a speakerphone for an audible signal. You're not required to do video.
Correct.
So we had originally said that video would be prohibitively expensive, and kind of gave up on the idea until we found out that audio is all that's required. And that's really all we're talking about.
Are there other questions or comments? Right, so we have the policy with 2 friendly amendments, and we're ready to vote. Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, the motion passes. Okay, next item on the agenda is item 6, land use.
Make a motion to approve an easement over town land adjacent to the existing soccer field off Flounder Boulevard to Red Wolf Broadcasting to erect a new radio tower on the adjacent properties contained in the driveway and utility easement and property easement agreement between the town of Ledyard and Red Wolf Broadcasting.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. A quick description of what this is all about.
Red Wolf Broadcasting wants to build a new radio tower.
And this is the folks who own the radio station across the street.
Exactly. And so they want to build a new tower over right adjacent to the existing Blonders Field soccer field. And for reasons of topography of the land and wetlands, it makes it kind of cost prohibitive and impractical to come off of Colonel Ledyard Highway directly. So they're requesting an easement from the existing roadway on the town property of Blonders Field to access the property.
Okay, so the tower itself would go on private land?
The tower itself is on private land. This is just the access easement to the property.
So it won't be anywhere near the kids' playing soccer.
No.
This tower is, we met with the owners of Red Wolf at a land use planning meeting. And we asked a number of questions. The tower is the same size and height and style as the one that's currently on Deer Hill
Are
at
they
the town
leaving that one
garage. They're leaving that there. The reason they need a new facility is they've been given license to broadcast at 50,000 watts, I believe it is, which puts the existing tower within the other footprints of other towers. And if they broadcast at 50,000 watts, the signals would conflict.
Right, and they would have to get FCC approvals from the other radio stations and stuff like that there'd be overlapping broadcast frequencies.
I know when they first put the tower up on Deer Hill. That's the only radio station I could get in.
Right. So they have to be far enough away
To stay
from
outside,
that tower.
to stay outside of the 50-mile radius that they have to stay out of the frequency crossover.
Okay. The document that is attached here under subparagraph F, Red Wolf Grant of Easement, I'm guessing that this is a document that was prepared by Red Wolf and submitted to the town. Do we know?
No. This was prepared by the town attorney, by our town attorney.
Okay.
They had given us something. Our town attorney rewrote it.
Oh, I mean, I read the document as saying they have the right on the land to actually erect the tower on our land, but that's not their plan.
No.
Well, I will.
Well, you could read it.
I mean, it's giving them the right to construct a tower. Grantee and third parties may, at their discretion and expense, construct such improvements in, to, under, and over subject property, consistent with the uses specified in paragraph 1. One of the uses was to construct, maintain, repair, replace, and improve towers, antennas, buildings,
The
driveways.
subject property is located at 581 Colonel Highway, not Blonders Field.
The improvements it was talking about was to the...
No, I'm sorry, okay. No, it says the grantor would be us.
Yes.
Okay, we're the grantor. Otherwise, we don't grant the easement. And we own the property at 581 Colonel Ledyard Highway. That's what this thing says. So the subject property is property we own. Okay, but I don't think it's our intention to give them an easement to actually construct an antenna, unless I'm reading this wrong.
No, I agree with you. It needs to say to construct a tower on adjacent property, not on this property. And what it says is they can enter and use the property for the construction, installation, use, and maintenance of the tower.
Could I ask where you're reading, because...
I'm reading from the actual
No, I understand.
document.
Where on that document?
Okay, well, you start in the very first paragraph. it says, we're the grantor. Okay, the second paragraph says, whereas, and it says, whereas the grantor owns property, 581 Colonel Ledyard Highway, and that's the subject property. So wherever you see the subject property, those two words used in this document, it's talking about 581 Colonel Ledyard Highway, which we, the town, own. And then it says in paragraph that has a number associated with it, paragraph 1, grant of easement, it says that it lists uses. And uses of the property includes the construction, maintenance, repair, replacement, improvement, operation, and removal of towers, antennas, buildings, driveways. So uses include building any of those things on 581 Colonel Ledyard Highway.
Even more important is the third paragraph whereas.
Right.
Desires an area to use the subject property for construction, installation, use, and maintenance of the tower. That means they're going to build it on 581. According to the terms that are here, they're going to build it on 581 Colonel Ledyard Highway, as opposed to being granted access through that property to where they're actually going to construct it.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, I mean, we have a motion. I mean, we have two choices. One, we could table it all together, or two, the motion was expressly worded as approve an easement over the town land adjacent to the existing soccer field to erect a new radio tower on the adjacent property. All right? But the problem I have with is the wording there in quotation marks, which I think would lead somebody to believe we're approving this document right here. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to approve this.
Is there a time issue?
I got from the zoning commission that they were entertaining or there was going to be an application, but they needed, it was sort of a catch-22. They were looking for the town council to say that, yes, the easement was going to be granted as sort of a prerequisite for whether or not there would be zoning approval for the antenna on the adjacent property.
Well, I'm getting the sense that we don't have a problem with granting the easement. We have a problem with this document.
Yes.
The wording of the document.
So,
If you read the original Red Wolf submission, they have several other paragraphs, whereas, that further define it better.
Actually, it refers and names a site plan document. It names a map. The name in the easement is the same as the name on the map, and the map shows the tower on adjacent property.
And the map was commented, and changes were made based on comments.
If you go down to item H, which is the Red Wolf submission, they have the easement through our property, and they state the grantee has entered into a disagreement with the Allens for the adjacent property, and that their ingress and egress is the intention of the property.
Let me do this. Let me propose that we, with a friendly amendment, we change the motion to express the sense of the council that we will approve an easement over town land adjacent to existing soccer field off Blonders Boulevard to Red Wolf Broadcasting to erect a new radio tower on adjacent property, subject to review of an easement document to be provided by
Well,
the mayor.
yeah, I'm going to ask you a question. There's two easements here. Which one?
There's another easement?
The attachment H.
H is also easement agreement, which is the one provided by.
Right, which says attorney.
Which is actually the one entitled driveway utility easement and property.
Oh, so I'm reading the wrong document.
well, no,
I don't know that.
I don't know that.
I'm telling you, I'm looking at this document, and I don't see the concerns that you're bringing up. It seems very clear that it talks about where the tower is being built.
In the package, there's two easement documents.
All the documentation that came in as it came in, it got added to the file so that you have a history of what was going on.
What's the title?
Yeah, one is listed as F, attachment F, and it's Red Wolf granted easement.
Okay, so,
And then there's another one, David, that shows that attachment H, which is Red Wolf driveway utility easement agreement.
H is what I'm looking at.
So that's
H
the one that came from the town attorney.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that the one you're looking at?
No.
Well, that's the issue, because I'm looking at it here, and I don't see what the issue is.
That's the latest date of 3/26/12.
Yeah, if you look at H, you'll see it's very clear. It was completely rewritten by our attorney.
Okay, well, that
more
makes me
sense.
feel better about the town attorney.
Me too. Me too.
I thought I missed something really bad.
Okay, so the very first thing I said was that the document I was looking at was probably something submitted by
By Red
Red
Wolf.
Wolf.
And it was.
Okay, and I said, no. Okay, so the answer to that question was yes, and we could have avoided the last 20 minutes of discussion.
Yes.
Okay, so now that I'm looking at the correct document, I see that there are several more paragraphs in the beginning that talk about the fact that this would specifically be on private land. The actual antenna would be on the private land, and we are granting, well, an easement just for passage.
Egress only.
Okay.
Well, we got that straightened out.
But we all did go to the same,
Yes, we did.
we were all looking at the same thing.
Well, we were all, the mayor was looking at it
He
differently.
was looking at the right one.
Nevertheless,
We can't see that. At least on this side we can.
okay. So the motion is to approve the easement document, which in our list of documents with letter designations, it's document H and not document F. Okay, I've said enough.
Do we want to put
Any other
somewhere-
discussion?
Do we want to put somewhere in the motion that it's the document dated March 26th?
Yes, that's probably a good idea.
I'll accept that friendly amendment.
The quoted title that's in the motion doesn't match the title of the document.
If you take the quotation marks in the motion, Roxanne, in the motion, there's, the motion ends with a title in quotation marks. If you take the ending quotation marks and put them after the word agreement,
It should say property.
Right, where you
Instead of
doing?
property easement agreement, it's maintenance in place of property easement.
Okay.
Title of the document is driveway, utility easement, and maintenance agreement.
all right, so we need to change the motion.
Yes.
Okay, the motion needs to change the title in quotation marks to be the same as the document we're looking at under subparagraph H.
I'll make a new motion.
You don't need to.
I'll amend the motion that change it to read
Driveway, utility easement, and maintenance agreement.
I can do that.
driveway and utility easement and maintenance agreement.
Right, dated March
Dated
20th.
March 26th, 2000.
Well, the document's not actually dated, though. I mean,
It's in the title.
It's in the
It's
title.
already 326.
it's in the electronic title.
Not in the title.
That's
Right,
a
right,
that's a
right.
file document name.
Right, it's in the file.
So, I mean, if we want to add the words electronic file document name, but it's not actually the,
Not the title.
The document is itself.
yeah, the document itself is going to end up with a date, and that date's going to be the date everybody signs it, and it gets filed on the land records.
No.
That's why it would not be correct to say it's dated
When we
March
should we
26th.
correct the title of the motion? It won't.
All right, so with all of that confusion, Roxanne, do you think you know what the motion is? And if you do, can you read it to us? We just need to be clear what the motion is that we're going to, before we think about voting.
Motion to approve an easement over town land adjacent to the existing soccer field off Blondhurst Boulevard to Red Wolf Broadcasting to erect a new radio tower on the adjacent property as contained in the driveway and utility easement and maintenance agreement between the town of Ledyard and Red Wolf Broadcasting. Is that right?
That should be correct.
Yes.
Okay, so that is the motion. Any other discussion? Okay, Roxanne, please call the roll.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. McGrath? Mrs. McGrath?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mrs. Wadecki?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Okay, the motion passes. Item 7, land use.
Motion to accept Chigley Way into town's road inventory of the public street in accordance with ordinance number 45, and ordinance amending an ordinance regulating the addition of any new street or highway into the highway system of the town of Ledyard.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there discussion? You tell them.
Maslin has approved this.
Steve Basil approved this as,
Met the criteria.
it's met the criteria. He says that the town has been maintaining the road for the last 2 years anyway. The only stipulation he added was that